Hey everybody, welcome back to Highly Unlikely with Josh and Jenaye. And our friend Jeff is here today.
Yeah.
Dr. Jeff
Oh boy.
Rundio. We're bringing out all the titles today. But so thankful for all of you that are joining, and thankful for Jeff. Jeff is, he's a doctor in town. He's also on our board at the church. He's a family guy. He's got a great family, great kids.
Thank you.
Great wife, and he is really just a strong leader in our church and loves the Bible and loves following Jesus, loves missions.
I do.
And so just a great person.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're thankful that you're going to share out of your journey and help other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to.
So tell everybody about your family.
Oh boy. Let's
We
see.
have a half hour. It's fine.
My beautiful wife, Heather, she's wonderful. She has to be wonderful because we have 5 kids. My oldest is 12. My youngest is 5. So, and we homeschool.
Yeah,
So she's got her hands full. And my schedule is like completely random and all over the place. So she has a lot to deal with, and she does it very, very well.
With a lot of grace.
Lots of grace.
Yeah.
So, yep.
That's awesome.
And you have a dog, which I feel like I didn't know until 2 months
have a
ago.
dog?
Yeah, he's the forgotten child.
Is he a
Yeah.
doodle?
No.
Okay.
No, Wisla.
Wisla.
Yeah.
How long have you had him?
He's, I'm a horrible dog owner. I'm probably 7, I think.
Yeah. I'm like, I've been to your house one time to hang out with your wife, and I'm like, I can't remember if there's a dog.
Yeah, he's a bird dog, so he's very energetic. So we usually like when people come over, like, unless they want like a dog in their face all the time, we kind of just,
Do you prefer a dog
put him
in
away.
your face or
Yeah.
not?
It's like at all times, not just like when you come in the door. Like,
Oh my
at all
gosh.
times.
Intense.
Yeah.
That's too funny.
Okay, well, we always start with a question. So here's the question. Intriguing one today. What is the best or most rewarding thing about your job?
Oh,
J-O-B.
that's a good one. I think it's taking care of people. Really, it is. I mean, that's maybe a cliche for a doctor to say, but it really is for me. It wasn't always that way.
Yeah.
Before I really knew Jesus, it wasn't like that, right?
Right.
But now that I can see people as truly, God's beloved, that really has become the most rewarding part of my job is just taking care of people.
Yeah.
When they come in with illnesses, bad diagnoses, deaths, sometimes I have the opportunity to pray with them or pray for them.
Right.
And that makes, that makes a rough day better when I get to do something like that. So
Right.
That's definitely part of why we wanted you to be here, because there's a lot of people who ask questions a lot about how do I represent Jesus in the marketplace, or in my job, and taking opportunities to pray for people or just, like living with character. And so I'm excited for you to speak to that a little bit, because I know you do that. I've even heard stories of, things that have happened.
Oh, really?
There's another nurse in our church, right, who will go and pray for people, and we've heard great stories too of stuff that God has used her to do. And so that's great.
Yeah.
Jenaye, what's the most rewarding part of your job outside of working with your husband?
I was going to actually say working with you is very fun.
That's
Like we
I wish I wouldn't have
That's good.
fished for that compliment.
See, now
but
you can't use that answer.
I literally thought Josh can make some comment about
You
so
knew.
blessed to
You
work with
knew.
her. But it is. We've talked about it's a blessing. But I mean, it sounds like I'm copying you, but it is the people, right? I think our team first and foremost, because a lot are friends, but just like I think of the growth we've seen in everyone on the team, like that's super rewarding. And the whole goal would be that they're great leaders that then lead the church, which then the church is people, which makes it beautiful and also messy. So
Yeah.
Indeed.
yet the testimonies, which are people,
Yeah.
is the greatest reward, right?
I just think of one girl, her family, and I've told the story before, but her dad was very opposed to her coming to church here and stuff. And then we were at her wedding, and he came over and thanked us for the impact. And now he got baptized this year and has had a total life transformation.
Oh, that's
and
cool. Yeah.
so rewarding.
But you're like, I was 7 years in the making, perseverance with people.
Yeah.
So Yeah. How about you? Other than
I
working
think-
with your wife?
Other than that, I think the more I think about this question, I think the life transformation is huge, but I'm realizing more and more I get to empower people into what they're called to do. You know, whether that's like with our staff team or
Right.
with key leaders in the church, but just getting to release people into like their lane or into ministry, which is super rewarding.
Right.
And sometimes they struggle and getting to walk with them, or sometimes they really succeed. And it's just rewarding to be a part of, or even with like the missions organizations and missionaries, being able to like let them know that our church is behind them or financially support them. That is like one of my favorite parts of what we do. So super rewarding to do that.
Yeah.
So great question.
Great start. I love that it naturally leads into kind of what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. So I think the focal point today is like, I already mentioned, but like working in the marketplace, making an impact there, but also, Jeff, you're a huge part of like building out the discipleship curriculum, you know, like really discipling on a deep level, hundreds of people every year, not to mention the fruit that comes from discipling those people and just having that impact. And so I know that's what you're doing today, but I want to like back up because I don't think your Christian life was always that way.
No.
Yeah. So when was like the pivot point where, and I don't know how you want to paint it, if it's like from when you went from, when you began to start living missionally, if you want to call it that, or like,
yeah, a lot of people have like a BC story, right? They, like before Christ story. Like for me, I don't really have a BC story. I kind of grew up in the church, but I have a BS story before the Spirit.
I thought you meant like I was faking it as a Christian.
No BS as in before Spirit.
Bit of mystery.
Nice.
I love it.
Nice.
And
That's
so that's funny. I mean, without going into the full testimony, it was probably in 2018 when I went on really my first mission trip, really, as an adult at least, to Haiti as a medical mission. And God just wrecked me in a lot of ways. I was really apprehensive to go initially, though I grew up in the church, you know, I had knowledge of the Bible and that sort of thing. Looking back, Jesus was not my Lord. You know, I was good. I was a good person, but he was not my Lord. That trip just wrecked me. And it just so happened to kind of fit with my profession too. And so I think it was probably a combination of things, right? That was the reason that was kind of the pivotal point in my life. But yeah.
I remember, if I remember right, you were impacted even before you left on the trip, like just in praying leading up to the trip. And like
the night, I think it was the night before we left, Sam Hapip, he kind of, I think we were in the old overflow room, and he was like, you know what, I think we just need to pray. And like, he sent us into what I call a forced time of prayer.
You're going to pray and you're going to like it.
Yeah, that's what I at least called it at the time. Now I'd be like, yeah, let's go.
Right? 100%.
But at the time it felt very much like a forced time of prayer. And so, yeah, I went in and God just broke me. I went over by myself, and I guess that was the first time ever that I really like gave my life to Jesus, like really like surrendered it all. And anyway, yeah, from that point on, I've walked lighter. I think I remember talking to you afterwards, and you're like, what happened? You know, we hadn't even talked, and you were like, what happened?
Right.
Like, there's something different about you.
Yeah.
Right.
And there certainly was.
And now in 5 years since, or whatever it's been, like the fruit of your life is dramatically changed too, right?
Yeah. Yep. Had you told me, you know, where I would be even a year from then, or especially 5 years from now, there's no way I would have believed you.
Right.
Yeah.
Like all the stuff I've done, where I've been, who I've preached the gospel to, where.
Right.
That now we're leading a transform, group that's 100 140, 150 people. No, no, that would have been, there's no chance.
Yeah. I was just reading in Matthew this morning, and I was struck by the verse that talks about, I think some of the disciples are talking about like who's the greatest in heaven. And Jesus said, it's going to be those who, and he talks about the rich young ruler.
Yeah.
He says, but those that have walked away from like houses, and those that have walked away from riches, those who have walked away from certain things, I think he says 100-fold is going to be their reward, you know, and that's not necessarily on earth. I believe he's talking about like in eternity, but man, it just struck me like there's a certain loss, like when you walk through something like that, you know, but the fruit that follows your life when you've had that true moment of Jesus becoming Lord, you can see it in the fruit of people's lives, not just like, I made a decision, but the fruit changes.
Right.
Which is,
I think in real time, you think, you count the cost, right?
Yeah.
But the cost of not following Jesus is so much more than the pilly cost of following him in hindsight, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like following Jesus is the good life, right? That's the treasure in the field that you'd go and sell everything for, is discipleship with Jesus and following Jesus.
Yeah. What do you think stops people from doing that or ever experiencing it? Because I think there's probably people that are listening that haven't totally experienced that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's common in our culture because it doesn't cost a lot to say you follow Jesus. You know, it really struck me when I went to the Middle East, and people there, when they say yes to Jesus, like their life's at stake.
Yeah.
Their job, their livelihood, their family, everything. And so they don't just say yes. Like when they say yes, they follow him, right?
Right.
And here there's very little in the way of persecution or anything like that. And so you can have people who just say they do, like I did for many years, right? But without having allegiance to Jesus, right? So.
What was the scariest part? Was there a scary part?
When I was over there?
No, like making that decision to follow Jesus wholeheartedly, and then like the things he asked you to do after that. Like, what were the things that were hard or scary?
Scary, I guess just the unknown.
Yeah.
You know, you're used to being your own boss, right? Like you're used to being your own Lord. What you say goes, right? You know, and in a way, it's the original sin, right? Like Adam and Eve chose autonomy, right? Rather than following God. It's the same thing today, right? It's who are you going to follow? You want to follow yourself, or do you want to follow Jesus? And when you do that, that comes with a lifestyle change, right? Yeah. You know, I like in the sinner's prayer, like, right, when somebody comes to Jesus, right? I liken that more to like an I do to a marriage, right? So it's the first step, right? It's the I do. When you guys get married, though, like, did your life look the same the day before as it did the day after? Like, no, it totally changes, and it should. Your life should totally change when you say yes to Jesus, right? Just like a marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that analogy. I heard somebody talk about that once, where like when you're down on your knee presenting a ring, it's not about like, I got you this ring, you know, and will you accept this ring? It's really, will you accept all of me?
Yep.
And that's I think, the constant proposal that Jesus gives to people.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm willing, I've already committed all of myself and all the riches of who I am to you. Do you?
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And it's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people just sit with Jesus on one knee, looking at him, you know, and are scared to take him up on that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I would love even just to dive in more to you being a doctor. And I think me too, coming from, I always make the joke because I have a doctorate in physical therapy. And I do know people that make people call them doctor. And I'm like, no, Jeff is the doctor you want. If you're having a medical emergency, it ain't any other kind of doctor. Because specifically you work in the emergency room. Has that been where you've been?
Yeah, my whole
hospital?
career, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so even coming to Jesus, like what changed in your profession? Yes, you talked about how you view people, but I think I love talking to people who have to hold science that sometimes people argue can come against the gospel, but I think so much of science and how our bodies are created points straight to the Lord and He's creator. But just would love even just, you can share openly, like, how did it change? How did it change at work? How did your coworker relationship change or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess as with anything, there's always some change at first, right?
Yeah.
But then it's a slow drawn out process for most of the time, right? Most people want the lightning bolts all the time, right? But God is more like manna in the wilderness, right? It's a slow kind of persistent thing.
Right.
And so looking back over the last few years, I can see like significant changes and just the way I see people. I never treated patients bad, but like now I see them different, right? And it's hard to explain other than, I look at them as sons and daughters of the King now. As before, probably not. I looked at them as humans who deserved respect and care.
Right.
But now I see them as much more. So,
yeah.
As far as, science and stuff, I'm going to have to agree. Like, I was a microbiology major too, so I've been kind of in the whole, science camp for a long time.
Is that your bachelor's?
I did biology.
Biology, yeah. And I've never come across anything that's shaken my faith.
Right.
I really haven't. Like, it's quite the opposite. Kind of the deeper you go. I even kind of dabble in a little quantum physics nowadays just for fun. But
for fun. I play pickleball. Quantum physics for me. No thanks.
Yeah. Sorry. I know. I'm a nerd, I guess.
I love it.
That's okay.
It's great.
But the deeper you go, the more I think God presents himself.
Yeah.
Really, he has to. Like, there's no other answers. So, no, I think it builds my faith, if anything. So,
right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yep.
How do you lead differently in your home? How do you lead differently at work? How do you lead differently in the church because of what you've experienced? And
I look at, I guess discipleship has been kind of the key kind of change in that.
Yeah.
Where I see many of my relationships as discipleship. Like, I see my kids as my disciples, like first and foremost. Like, I'm a steward for them, right? Like, they're God's children, kind of almost first and foremost, right? And so I see my time with them as discipling them.
Yeah.
Just like Jesus did with his disciples. He lived with them, he ate with them, he broke bread with them.
Yeah.
All that thing. And so what they
did they
see,
crawl into Jesus' tent at 2:30 in the morning?
Gosh,
like, would he still have loved them?
Yeah. And say, I have to throw up like my kids did last week.
Wake him up at 5. That's what I'm just trying to.
Anyways.
We're not bitter at all that our children are waking us up so much.
No. No, I hear you. It's fresh in my mind too.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I guess.
Sorry, took you totally off course.
That's all right.
Discipleship.
He lived with them. He ate with them.
Yeah. And so I no longer see like my home life separate from my spiritual life or separate from my work life. And that's a really common, I think, mistake that people make is they kind of separate their spiritual life from their home life, from their work life.
Yeah.
And I even used to say it, but like, you take a personality test. It's like, well, where am I when I'm taking this? Like, is this work Jeff or is this like home Jeff? Right. And I no longer see a difference. Right.
Yeah.
And And that's kind of it's a common misconception. It's almost a little bit of dualism, right? Like there's the real life. Mm-hmm. I just did air quotes on a podcast.
We say it all the time.
I do it all the time.
Oh, yeah. Air quotes.
But your real life, it is your life with Jesus. Like there should be no separation between those.
Right.
And so, I think that carries, Paul in several Paul's letters, I think probably Ephesians and Colossians off the top of my head, where he ends the letters with, the practical message of the household. So the message he preaches in the first half, and then he says, what does that look like in the household, right? And that's where the kind of the spiritual rubber meets the road, I guess, as it were, right? Like it's really easy to act like a Christian on Sundays, right? Once a week, twice a week, small groups, that sort of thing. It's something entirely different to be that same person at all times, right? Yeah. And again, that just takes transformation, that takes discipleship. It's often a slow process, but
right.
Yeah.
And always ever changing.
Yeah.
Always growing.
I would love to hear how you got into teaching Transform.
Yeah.
Wait, let's explain what Transform is
I was
for
going
those
to
that
have
are.
him do that too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I said, Josh, you taking the lead on this one. And then
No, that's one of the questions that I had written down is like, we've been talking recently about the iceberg of Evangel, because a lot of people see the Sunday experience, but they don't see the other 90% that's under the surface of what happens and how people grow, and what's happening. And obviously the Holy Spirit is the one who's working in people's lives, but there's a lot that when we're called to make disciples that we're trying to put in place to help people take those steps. And so, how did Transform come to be? And then we'll ask you more about it.
It came to be with, I guess both myself and Pastor Nate kind of saw the need for it, saw that people were kind of wanting more. I study a lot, and me and Nate kind of get along in that way. We're both kind of Bible nerds, and we wanted to do something more, and Transform kind of fits that bill, right? And so we don't call it a Bible study, although we do study the Bible a lot. Just ask anybody who's in it. We do study the Bible a lot.
I mean, practically,
yeah,
they're journaling through
verse by verse. As of now, we're just doing New Testament, but multiple books, and we meet it's a big group once a month, and then small groups between that time. But it's more than a Bible study. At least that's our hope for it. It's really discipleship, right? We incorporate community and joy and worship and prayer and all those things, because in the end of the day, if pure intellect is not going to change your heart.
Right.
Just immersing yourself in Jesus will. And that's it.
Right.
And that's
so good.
That's what we're trying to do,
right.
really. Get people to fall in love with him and his word and who he is. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of the heart of Transform.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you go to Evangel and that's your home church, and Transform is technically under the umbrella of a Connect group. So it's a Connect group that you can be in. I would say, it's our deepest, most commitment-oriented Connect group, and such a great opportunity for you to have exponential growth in the Lord. And I think, too, a huge part of it is just being in a safe space to ask questions. Because, right, do you guys answer people's questions?
Yeah, Nate and I do. We used to call it Q&A, question and answer. Now we call it Q&R, just question and response.
Yes.
Because we may not always have the answer, but people, they ask all kinds of questions. We have some good deep discussions. And,
I love that.
Yeah.
I think for church leaders that are listening to, like I've sat at the table with people from some really well-known churches in America, and they've not figured this out, and I'm not saying that we have, but this was a missing component in our church, especially when we were explosively growing, or as we've explosively grown. This has been a part of just saying, how do we fulfill the commitment and the commission to disciple,
Right.
And to continue to help people to grow. And so I think finding something like this has been super helpful, because even the people that are coming out of it, they're the core of our church.
Yeah,
and
absolutely
they're serving, and they're stepping up. And it's just, to other church leaders, I can't tell you how important getting this part of your church moving is, because it really feeds everything else. And I think it's stewardship.
Yeah.
Are we working on getting transformed?
We're working on, kind of boxing it up into something that other churches can grab onto and use.
Because really the big point of transform is each letter of transform stands for an attribute that we would hope and pray that everyone eventually in our church would embody. Right?
Yeah.
Do you guys know them off the top of your head?
He for sure does.
Nate's going to kill me if I don't, but
don't worry, I have it pulled up because I
Trust
could
the Bible.
Trust the Bible.
Restraint is one of the R's.
Relationally connected.
Yep.
Abide. I'm trying to think of the next letter.
N is not ashamed.
Not ashamed.
Confession, right?
Yep. S
is spirit-filled?
Sacrificial.
Oh, sacrificial.
But S
is filled with the Spirit.
Full of the Holy Spirit.
Full of the Holy Spirit.
O.
Obedient.
R, which you said, the other R.
Yep.
Restrained.
Yeah, restraint.
Which restraint is, can you just describe that?
Restraint would be, when you follow the way of Jesus, there's some things that you're going to have to withhold, right? Like, you're probably going to stop cursing and your life's going to change around, right?
Yeah.
And so that's
kind of like the sanctification.
Not as many liberties to take. Yeah.
Yep.
And then
there's
the
new
last
liberties.
one, M.
Missional.
Mission. Yep. Mission-minded.
Whew.
You did great.
it.
You did so good. I love how F is full of the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
That was funny. We got to the O and I was like, I think it's obedient, or else I'm just saying O words. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But those are attributes that we've kind of pinpointed that, like, what does a disciple of Jesus look like?
Right.
They're going to trust the Bible. They're going to be relationally connected. They're going to be in community, right?
Yeah.
There's no version of a Christian outside of community in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
It's imperative to, the way of Jesus, and so on and so forth. And so, it's a picture of what we want, what we think the Bible kind of teaches. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just love it because I've seen people in our church who were casual attenders or new guests, and they got involved in Transform, and all of a sudden they have community.
Yeah.
They are like, they're on mission.
They're on
like
fire. Yeah.
they start crying, talking about what Jesus is doing in their lives or in their marriage. Like, and I've realized more and more, like, all the other stuff is good. Like, and this is like so elementary, but I'm going to say it. Jesus really is the source.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like being close to Jesus and knowing him, like so seeking first his kingdom, like so many of the other things that we try to deal with in our lives that are out of alignment, just get better. Yeah. I was just talking to a friend over lunch about this today. Like there's some situations where you don't know what to do. And if you just get closer to Jesus, there's parts of it that are just going to naturally get better and you're going to respond better. And so,
and I think like what you said at the beginning too, like the Holy Spirit is like, obviously I was gonna say a crucial component, but like he's part of the Trinity. You can't remove him from who God is. But even like, I think people discovering and understanding now, like God's presence, how his Spirit moves and works. And it's not just, oh yes, I have a foundation of Jesus, but his Spirit is moving and working in my life. And it's just so powerful.
Yeah.
Renewing. It's exciting.
Yeah.
I keep calling you the disciple-making doctor now.
Yeah, that's not a bad title.
I guess.
I'll take that.
I just know it's my nickname for you.
Yeah.
It's great. I want to ask you, just like as somebody who's leading in the church, what are you most excited about God doing here? Like, what do you just see him doing and what gets you excited?
I'm going to say discipleship. A lot of the things you just touched on, like the people that we're seeing, like the change in people's lives that we're seeing. And I'm not even seeing all of it, right? It's so big now. Like Transform is so big now that I don't even see, a lot of the stories. I hear a lot of them secondhand, third hand, is that discipleship is what really gets me excited, because that's what Jesus told us to do, right? Like go and make disciples,
Yeah.
right? Bonhoeffer said, Christianity without discipleship is Christianity without Christ, and so it's just, discipleship is so foundational, and that just gets me excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Jeff, what's the difference in your mind? And I know this is like linguistics or like just wording, but like, what's the difference between Christian, a believer, and a follower of Jesus? Or how do you view those words? Because people use all of them.
No, that's a good question.
Yeah. What's your take?
I think originally Christian meant disciple, like 2,000 years ago. I think that the terms were interchangeable. I think over time, though, they've deviated a lot. In fact, I just heard some statistic recently. Something like 60% of Americans will check like the Christian box on something. But, studies show that maybe 4 or 5 or less than 5% of those people like actually follow Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a huge, huge discrepancy.
Yeah.
And that's unique to the Western church, just for the reasons we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no cost, there's no persecution, right? And so people can check the box. Doesn't necessarily mean much. The word, I think the word Christian shows up 3 times in the Bible, and the word disciple shows up like 250 or 260 times or something like that.
Right. Oh man.
And so those two I think are pretty far apart nowadays, right?
Yeah.
They didn't start out that way, but that's just the way things are.
Yeah.
And I said, a few years ago, once I really turned my life to Jesus, I said I never wanted to call myself a believer anymore either. I wanted to call myself a follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the Bible teaches, and Christians, and that's what Jesus never asked people to convert. He asked them to follow him.
Yeah.
Right? He wasn't after converts. He was after disciples. He was after people to follow him.
Right. So good.
I always think of the verse in James that says, "You believe." Like some people will say, "You have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I'll show you my faith by my deeds." You believe that there is one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder.
Yep.
So if even the demons can believe, but they're not following. So I just always think that too. Like you can reference.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have in Transform, I do like a little deep dive into faith, like what is belief, what is faith, and it hinges on the Greek word pistis. It's one of my favorite Greek words. In fact, one of our people who went through Transform made me a T-shirt that
I was
had
like, I've
pistis
seen a
on it.
T-shirt that says this word.
Yeah,
on it.
that's what a problem I have. But anyways,
I need to have a favorite Greek word.
it's really beautiful because when we read the word belief, we usually think of it as intellectual thought, right? Like the verse you just read, James, like, awesome, the demons believe. They have an intellectual knowledge of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But the way the Bible uses it, the word pistis is deeper than that. It's probably better translated as faithfulness or even allegiance. And so and that implies like this like action, right? This is called action. Like, yes, you believe it in your mind, and now you're going to go live it out. Right. And that's what belief means. Every time you read believe or faith in the Bible, it's that word. It's that word pistis.
That's awesome.
Read it deeper, and those verses are going to make so much more sense for one, and so much more meaningful.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I Googled it so I can read about it.
You got it. Okay.
And if she could get a shirt, that'd be great.
No.
What I'm jumping back topics for a second, but I don't want to leave this one behind. What would you say to somebody who's trying to make more of a difference in their workplace? They're serving Jesus,
Right.
following Jesus, and they're like, man, I'm discouraged. The people that I'm around.
Or feeling like they have to leave their career occupation
Sure.
Yeah,
to
right.
like, oh, I want to follow Jesus, or I want to make disciples. Do I have to quit my job? Or that too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, you look at the New Testament, like, Paul worked. He was a tent maker still, right? Like, and so, you don't have to quit your job. In fact, your job's often a place where you can show Jesus, right? One of the primary ways people see Jesus is through us, but are you reflecting him appropriately or not, right? But I think it really goes back to kind of a bit what I talked about earlier. It's that kind of that split, that dualism, where we think that we have a work life and we think we have a home life.
Right.
There's church Jeff, there's work Jeff, there's home Jeff, there's Jeff by himself on the couch, right? But the idea is like when you have a transformed heart, right, which is really what the aim of Jesus' teachings, right, is to become more like him. That's at all times. And when you see that that spiritual side of you start melding or molding into those other sides of you, and then all becoming one, I think that's where it's at, I think.
Yeah.
But again, that's often a slow process. Right. So like Jesus's favorite analogy for discipleship was that of a slow growing plant in John 15. Right.
Right.
So it's not often a lightning bolt moment.
Right. Jenaye, how do you talk about integrity? You have a saying that you say quite often.
Like kind of like for the same, if I cut through something,
yes,
like the same, like I think of like a loaf of bread, and if you cut through and like you're like, oh, the outside it looked done, like the inside is raw. Like integrity is you cut through and it's the same consistency from one end all the way to the other, and that for me was like an aha moment of like your life, your words, your actions. Yeah, if you cut through, so that's like the core of your being. That's the alone or with people. Yep. Is it consistent?
Right. I think that's just such a cool picture when you think it's not like you're separated out, compartmentalized lives. Like we all have to compartmentalize a little bit sometimes, but just saying I'm going to be the same through and through, we talk about
We're
that.
speaking character there. Like I think too, like
it is.
I wear things at home that I would never wear out in public. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about character, like that's what we're talking about. It's not like, because even I think people will meet Josh and it's like, you speak different on stage than here. It's like, okay, well, you're seeing the gift of God move through Josh, where he's a decently quiet person. He's not going to gab your ear off. And having to reconcile that, of like, but the character and the heart is the same. And that's what we're talking about with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a tangent. Sorry.
No, I love it. I mean, that's so much, what we've been talking about. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No, I thought of that too, because we'll talk often about like, we want our character to be consistent no matter what setting we're in.
Yeah.
But our personalities change in different environments, or they don't change, but like we
like
might.
your around
tendencies.
Yes, your tendencies.
That's not, that's different than like your core being, like who you are, right? Like,
and I think that's what people are looking for. Like when they realize like, oh, this guy behind the curtain in his home and in his private life, it's not just that he has a lot of integrity at work, you know, like, and I think people look for tricks sometimes of like, how do I be a light in my workplace or what do I got? And it's like, just live it. Just live it.
I know. I don't have, other than just saying like, don't be afraid to live your spiritual life everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't be afraid to do that. It's not gonna happen overnight. I understand that, but like, I know, well, at least it didn't for me, but, but yeah, over time, that is what happens. As long as you let him work, right? It's just so important to just be with Jesus, that abiding, the A in transform, right? Is just so important, right? Like I said earlier, like intellectual is one part, but immersing yourself in Jesus is what really transforms your heart.
For sure.
Yeah.
I do think in regards to discipleship and in our lens of viewing like leading a church, I do think if we can draw people to abiding, it's like that's a win. Like that's the win of the day. It's like we can get you to abide with Jesus and you learn his voice and you like, great. I think that's our number one job, right?
Oh yeah, because everything with Transformed is bonus. It's like you can abide with Jesus and with the right people and get all you need, but you have the opportunity to have other people do Q&R with you, you know, or to answer your questions or to like walk with you, or you know, and that is the way to. That's the fertilizer on the slow growing plant. You know?
I tell people, you know, all the time in Transform, like me and Nate we're not the secret ingredients here. Like we're just, you know, you signed up for this. So, you know, we're introducing you to Jesus, right? You know, we're bringing you to, you know, on your knees to his throne room.
Right.
And what you do from there is up to you. But yeah.
Well, before we're done. Have you thought of any appropriate for the air ER stories? All I can say is when we have to bring our kids to the ER, which with our youngest happened on how many months ago, I just was real happy that we saw two familiar faces walk in the room.
Yeah, that happens more and more nowadays. I see people that I know.
I bet.
Yeah.
Is Jeff in? No, we're not coming.
Yeah.
This emergency will have to wait.
Man.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for too long. It's got to be so off the wall for me to even like give it brain space, I guess.
Like, does anything make you queasy anywhere? Like, I mean, I think of like someone vomiting on me, I definitely would throw up. But I'm sure that's like common, maybe.
One of my kids puked in a fan once. That made me queasy.
How do your kid? Wasn't even on.
Dad, watch this.
No, she rolled over in bed and you know the term, you know, like when poop hits the fan.
Yeah.
Except most people don't say poop. Yeah. Well, we got to experience that with puke hit the fan. That made me queasy. But at work, not so much.
Oh man.
I'm one where I'm like, oh, that's gross. I'm just throwing it away.
Yeah.
I won't even deal with it.
No, I mean, we have, you know, people like apologize for being dirty and stuff sometimes. I'm like, oh, please. Like, you don't know the half of it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Don't worry. Yeah. And man, I can't think of a appropriate for podcast story.
Right. And I'm like thinking, have you ever been attacked?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
I've gotten swung at.
Yep.
Did you win?
Yeah. Yes.
Good.
I'll just say I embraced him.
I embraced him.
Oh man.
Quite literally. Like we just kind of bear hugged him. Yeah.
To the ground.
Yeah. So.
I have a favorite ER story, which is the time that Jenaye walked by our table in our kitchen and bumped into it.
Oh my gosh.
And a piece of wood, probably 2 inches
I do
long,
remember that.
went straight into her thigh.
Yeah.
Okay, it was more than 2 inches.
On YouTube. Wow.
And then I remember going, and we like couldn't get it to come out, so we went to the ER, and I knew the doctor. It wasn't anybody currently there.
I think I know who it was. Yeah.
But I knew the doctor, and he kind of gave me a bad time. He was like, "What? You didn't want to pull it out yourself?"
I remember us saying, "We got it this far because we couldn't see it at all, and we got it like that far out." And he would pull, and it would lift like all my skin. Everything was going, and I was like, "Nope, I need something."
He kind of looked at us like, "Oh, it really is in there." And then he literally had to like deaden the area.
Oh yeah,
and had to like brace his arm and yank it out.
Yeah, like 1 foot up on the table trying to pull this thing out.
It was the silliest visit. It was dumb.
It was.
But those things are fun for us.
Yeah, no one's dying.
You see problem, you fix problem.
Yeah.
And you go home. Right? Like
yes.
It's the more complicated, nebulous stuff that is a little more taxing.
I suppose that you can't close the tab in your mind.
Yeah.
Like it's not solved.
Yeah, because I suppose you either pass people on to like a floor upstairs or different things. Wow.
Yep.
Interesting.
Well, you are officially my most expensive friend to hang out with.
That may be true. When you come visit me at work, that's
when I visit you at work.
That's for sure.
Yeah, thankfully, you coming to visit me at work isn't There's no cost
Yeah,
associated.
that's right.
Anyways, here's where we are. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
And just thanks for being such a great example and discipling people and letting your passion and your really brilliant mind that does things like quantum physics.
Quantum Phillips.
Phillips.
I haven't studied that
Okay,
yet.
listen.
It's a new, very, very only intelligent people can study it.
All these classes that you guys talk about with math and science, I like took computer programming and stuff to not have to take those classes. It's like survival of the fittest, and I was not the fittest.
Sure.
So. All right, Jenaye.
Thanks.
Close this out.
All right. Well, thank you for listening in. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do that. And if you rate the podcast, that helps the podcast too. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.